only write tracks for Steve Swift reviews. He punched me twice in the face and asked for a duel. The pugilistic prophet with newbies diagnostics, like Scroobius Pip but less toxic. The UK comic shooting stars never lost it. It's 2025 and the internet still dies. Guys are chasing algorithms like a crack pipe high. Everybody based.
All right. As you can see, I'm Chris. This is the Bees of Boxing with Steve Swift, and joining me always would be none other than Steve Swift over there having himself a little social, tea biscuit, if you're watching this on YouTube. If you are, thank you so much. If you're listening to this on all of your podcast providers, please, thank you so much for that. Listen, we've got a lot to get into and probably not enough time to get into it. So I'm going to say first and foremost, Steve, how the heck are you doing this week? You look like you might be gloating a little bit, as it were, huh?
I am a golden god, to quote Percy Plant, because I said it, and I said two things. The first thing I said was that, and we'll talk about both of these things, I feel sure, that Usyk would unclip a belt and drop it to the floor. And I also said that Anthony Joshua would fight Jake Paul. And you said, aha, and for sure, and something like that. You know, and said it would never happen. And it might not happen because I've got a hot take on it.
Okay. I have one of those as well, and we're going to get into it. But hey, let it be known that as of right now, the word has come down. It is officially official as of right now. Jake Paul and Anthony Joshua, December 19th on Netflix at heavyweight, not an exhibition, not with 12-ounce gloves, not with 14-ounce gloves like he had against Mike Tyson, but with 10-ounce gloves. And it was kind of announced, but not announced last week, after we got finished doing the show and stuff like that. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to wait and see what happens here. But now word has been made official. Steve Swift is the smartest man in all of boxing. I mean, we've said this before. It is the most influential show because clearly what I think is that after listening to all of this, Jake was pushed into a corner and he had no choice. What do you know about this fight? Let's hear your hot take before I give you my thoughts on it, Steve, because, I mean, you're the brains behind all this.
I think that Jake listened, and I think he thought there is no other way to go, and you are right. And I podcasted about this tonight. He has been pushed into a corner. There is no one else. He had to. I can't think of anyone else that he could choose apart from Tyson Fury. I'll fight him. There's not a man in the world who can beat me. He's getting odder and odder every time I do him. So impersonate him. That's what I mean. We're not that close. I think that he had to do this, and he's now the underdog, and he had to be the underdog. And my hot take, I don't know about yours, but my hot take, I know there's a press conference coming up on the 21st. God damn. But I think this still won't go ahead. I really don't think it will. And I didn't think it would when Eddie Hearn said, we're not having an exhibition fight. We're not having an exhibition fight. I'm not going to have an exhibition fight. He didn't say it like that, but that sort of thing. He said, we're going to have pie and mash and jellied eels. He didn't say that either. He said, we're going to have a boxing fight. And I thought that'll be the sticking point, and it hasn't been. So I could be wrong here, but I think you only need to announce it and say, I was happy to fight him, and look at me being the underdog, folks. And that is the way he gets his ego back, and also his followers back.
Well, we talked about this a long time ago. We've talked about this, over and over and over again, is that in order for Jake to have this progression in his career, there's going to come a time, to steal a phrase from professional wrestling, there's going to come a time where he's going to have to turn babyface, because right now he's a heel. And as soon as he turns babyface, then he can get accepted a little bit more into the world of boxing. But it's almost like he's got to get jumped in like it's some gang thing or something like that. You know what I mean? Here's the thing. And I don't know how many people like that. Clearly, everybody in the boxing world, everybody in combat sports world is saying that, Anthony Joshua should mollywop Jake Paul in like 3.2 seconds. We saw what he did against Francis Ngannou, right? But here's my question for you. And the odds have come out. Let me say this to you. The odds have come out, and Jake Paul is currently sitting at a plus 770 to Anthony Joshua's minus 1,450. And if you think for 1 second, I'm not going to throw some scratch on Jake Paul, you're sadly mistaken. And here's why I say this to you, Steve. And I've got a question for you about this. And think hard about this. Who is Anthony Joshua beat? Who has Anthony Joshua actually beat? Because he's lost to Daniel Dubois by knockout. He's lost to Alexander Usyk on back-to-backs. In between those, Jermaine Franklin, a decision. He knocked out Robert Helenius, and he, beat Otto Wallen and knocked out Francis Ngannou, who everybody thought that should happen anyways. He lost to Andy Ruiz and then beat Andy Ruiz prior to all of that, because Andy was his first loss. Outside of that, he beat Joseph Parker, an old-ass Klitschko, Charles Martin, an old Dillian White all the way back in 2015 even. But if you think about this, tell me, who is Anthony Joshua actually beat?
We've said this many times, and people point to Andy Ruiz and say that he was a shot fighter after that. I reckon he was a shot fighter when he was put down twice by Klitschko, as I've said before. I think he's a shot fighter. I think all of the stuff that we've spoken about before around who is he going to now pal up with as a trainer, he's flirted with Usyk's camp and all of that. I think the psychological issues for him remain. And I think that after the Dubois fight, that's a real problem for him. And that's one of the reasons why he is happy to, well, maybe not happy to, but feels he should possibly micturate on his legacy by fighting Jake Paul, because he does need someone who it's easy to fight. Now, that could go really, really wrong for him, because if Jake Paul turns up, and let's face it, we don't know if Jake Paul has a punch. We don't know what kind of fighter Jake Paul is. Jake Paul doesn't know what kind of fighter Jake Paul is, and he hasn't had the opportunity to find out in this camp because he's been off for a while after the Gervonta Davis situation, probably, and he's now got to change his camp completely, and there's no time. So if he turns up, then he'll be buzzing around Anthony Joshua, and it'll be like, it'll be like Land of the Giants. It'll be like Sinbad or Jason the Argonauts or whatever with the gigantic statue. It'll be like that, the Achilles statue. And he might get some shots in. Now, I don't think that Jake Paul wins this, but he might get some shots in. And then Joshua's in a whole load of trouble, even if and when he wins.
Let me ask you this then. Every single fight that Anthony Joshua has lost has all started off the same way. He got hit in the mouth first. It seems like if you can punch him in the mouth first, you can dictate to Anthony Joshua what's going to happen. Every fight that he's won is because he was initiated that first punch. If Jake Paul can come in there and initiate even just a decent jab on Anthony Joshua, he's got a lot more of a chance of winning a fight. I think Jake Paul may have enough power to knock out an Anthony Joshua. It's heavyweight. I think that he can punch and you can catch somebody. Absolutely. He's done that. Now, they've also put a weight restriction on this, that Anthony can't weigh more than 245 pounds, which is fine. He weighed 244, I think it was, for his fight against Usyk, right? And he weighed like 255 for his fight against Daniel Dubois. 10 pounds between now and December. It's easy enough for him to do. This is it's a fairly short notice fight. It's a month away. You don't get as long of a camp. So there's going to be, you're not going to see that same Anthony Joshua come into this thing. What you're going to need to see is a pissed off Anthony Joshua come into this thing, because idiots like me are asking that question. Who have you ever beat? Right? So he's got to go out and prove something to himself, to boxing. There's something else that I wanted to say very quickly that caught my eye on this past weekend's fights when they were talking to His Excellency Turki Al-Sheikh, and they said they've already got something set up for February. What do you think that's going to be?
Well, I think we all are surmising that it's going to be a fighter who I've done an impression of in the recent past. And DAZN have announced this as well. Stay with us, folks, and get that pay-per-view package and get the 20, what is it, 30, 40, 500 pound a month or whatever it is. 500,000 pounds a month, I think it is. And you'll get something in February. Yeah, I mean, I think first, though, just to take a sidestep, what Eddie Hearn has said is Turki Al-Sheikh has got to convince Tyson Fury. Well, the great thing is, and he's so cool, Frank Warren doesn't seem to be involved in this, which is brilliant. He stayed out of the shenanigans of, I'm not convincing the man. He'll do what he wants to do. I can ask him, but I'm not going to tell him. But Turkey might be able to do that. However, I think that Tyson Fury, I read articles recently. I read one yesterday, which was, are we getting a bit sick and tired of his constant back and forth, and is he moaning too much and all of that? So he's going to have a Carl Froch situation. He's going to have to either shit or get off the pot. He sounds like Brian Clough now, famous English football manager. But he's that's probably, that may well happen, or depending on what happens to Dubois.
Well, and here's the thing,
Dubois, Joshua. Why did I say Dubois? Joshua. Yes. Whatever happens to Joshua, if he has trouble, then that fight won't be as tasty, will it?
It will be to Tyson Fury, right? Because if you think for a second, like, there's now going to be they've got the common one with Francis Ngannou, right? And we'll see what happens if Jake can come out there and put something on him, on Anthony Joshua, then Tyson's going to be the first one to stand up, Tyson Fury, I mean, and start shit talking the shit house. That's what's going to happen. Now, do you honestly think that Jake Paul, I think Jake has already taken the money from Netflix, perhaps? Maybe that's a possibility, because this is all like, now he's scrambling. After the Gervonta Davis came out and said, I'm not following your script. You can go ahead and say what you want. For those of you that think that Gervonta Davis hasn't had these same problems that Jake Paul was like, we're not giving a platform to a person like that. It's been going on for 5+ years. Jake Paul knew exactly who he was dealing with. But Gervonta Davis said, nah, I'm not playing around with this. So it forced Jake's hand. It kind of forced him into a position where now you're going to have to fight a boxer. But what boxer at what level that's available, that's tasty enough to be able to sell some tickets for Netflix, not just for, anybody. This isn't going on Showtime. No, this is Netflix. Anthony Joshua was a great choice for it. But now he's in a real fight. Now he's in a fight against an Olympic champion, a former heavyweight champion, a real boxer. This is the actual test that I think turns the corner for Jake Paul regardless of what happens, the next fight for Jake Paul, everybody's going to treat him differently. Everybody's going to be on team Jake Paul after that, guaranteed, because he came out, he takes his licks, he jumps into the fire, and he comes out the other side of it a better human being. That's what I see happening in this. Now, if Jake wins this fight, oh, we're all screwed. We are all screwed, because the venom, the visceral talk that's going to come out of Jake after that, beating the Goliath of all Goliaths in the heavyweight division of professional boxing. Holy shit. The Paulie Malignaggi's of the world are going to lose their minds.
You're also going to get Jake versus Eddie. So that's because Eddie won't be able to resist that.
Right.
So, you're going to get some extraordinary chat.
Yeah.
I mean, there is one thing that I mentioned earlier on when I was on my podcast. I did 2 pieces on it because I just thought there's more to this. If he loses badly, you're right. He will actually store up some really good feeling, because he'd already got a taste of that after the Tommy Fury situation, when he was kind and nice and said, "Look, I love boxing, whether I've been beaten or not." And people went, "Oh, isn't he nice?" So he's already got a bit of that. But if he gets beaten up badly, and you think, well, who is there for him now in the influencer boxing type world, then it will make the decision for him. And at the moment, he's got the tyranny of choice, because he either makes a load of money fighting Anthony Joshua and some others, or he goes for a belt, which is not so much money, but he wants that legitimacy. So if he gets beaten up badly, and I hope he doesn't, because he could be in severe trouble if he does. I mean, I worry about his health too. But if he gets beaten up badly and people go, "You weren't the boxer I thought you were. You couldn't throw anything. You were, you did a Chris Eubank Jr., for instance." Talk about that in a minute. Then he's probably going to have that closed down, and that will mean he will have to look at the title. So in a way, he wins all ways out, because he's either got both of those things keeping going, or he's had to close one and he's had to go for the title.
If Jake loses this fight, he's got an out. I think that this came down to 2 people in this fight. One of them doesn't sell to Netflix the first time out. But if Jake loses this fight against Anthony Joshua, that one comes back into the mix and sells on a return. If you were to do it where Jake Paul came and said, "I will take that rematch against Tommy Fury. We're going to, instead of Gervonta Davis, we've got Tommy Fury in December," which they may have said to Netflix, "Hey, what do you think of this?" And Netflix said, "Meh, we don't really care about that. What else you got?" Shit. The only other thing we got is, I don't want to say what we got. I don't know if you ever heard of Anthony Joshua. Oh yeah, we're going to do that. Which may have happened. Now, if Jake goes out and loses, he's forced to take a step back. But if he's forced to take a step back, there's still that fight for him. There's still that, I got to get redemption against that other boxer that beat me. I realize where I am, and I've got to step back, and I've got to take this boxing seriously. And the first step to that is beating the boxer that beat me the first time. And that's Tommy. If he wins against Anthony Joshua, yes, then he starts looking at somebody in the IBO, or, the WBO, who seems to be a joke, and we're going to get to that in a second in itself. But there's going to be options for him to look at other legitimate fighters that aren't going to be as tantalizing, as salacious in the sell as an Anthony Joshua, as a Tommy Fury, because the story is already there. Now you're putting Jake Paul, against boxers for the sake of putting him against boxers. You put him against, Richard Aracapo, and I mean, there's going to be some real problems after the way that he fight this weekend. I think this is the perfect time for Jake Paul to capitalize on this. It's a win-win for Jake. This is absolutely a win-win for him. Either that fire gets fed that much more and he becomes that much more of a prick and a thorn in the side and sticks it to everybody, which part of me hopes that that happens because the establishment of boxing kind of deserves to get poked at a little bit. They get a little bit too big for their britches, and somebody needs to come on and remind them that, listen, you're not the ones. We're the fighters out here that are doing this. And then there's the other part of me as a boxing fan for so many years, when I get to see such great fights as, you know, all of the stuff with Sugar Ray Leonard, all of the stuff with Roberto Duran, all of the lineage that goes along with boxing, and now new stuff with guys like Brian Norman Jr., Abdullah Mason, you know, even recently with guys like Vasily Lomachenko, all the work that Alexander Usyk has done in the heavyweight division to bring that back to light, all the work that heavyweights are doing in general to bring that back to light. I want to see Jake Paul get his upcomings. But that doesn't do anything going forward for the world of boxing. That's like, see, we told you so. And then the door closes. So part of me wants him to come out and beat Anthony Joshua.
And if that happens, two people who'll be dancing will be His Excellency and Dana White, because they want him at that table. And my God, we've got someone incredible if we do that. Yeah. So they will love that. And if he doesn't win, have to rethink this.
Yeah, 100%. It's a weird thing, though, when you like rethinking things after the fact, because we saw that happen this past weekend, when the part 2 finally happened, rounds 13 through 24 of Conor Benn and somebody who slightly resembled a didn't want to be there, Chris Eubank Jr. Now, as much as they talk about how this show sold out and it was great and there was nothing to do with the dads this time around, I'm going to call bullshit, because the dads showed up at the most important time for this, when they do that final face-off before weigh-ins, and then everybody had to be reminded, oh, this is the thing with the dads. Got it. But at the end of the day, only one fighter showed up. That was Conor Benn. Chris Eubank. I mean, here's my question to you. Do you think that Chris Eubank is just an old shot fighter now? Or do you think that the 2 fights in a row with the weight restrictions that he's had on this, do you think that had anything, like you can get away with it once, but maybe not twice? What do you think?
I think both of those things. And I think I'd add another, which was Conor Benn's brilliance. That was a superb showing, because he has not before. And one of the questions was, can you keep yourself in check, Conor? Can you do this? And I watched a lot of stuff about this, and I saw him on interview before the fight, the weeks leading up to, being very calm, and then suddenly, and you just thought, oh, you can't keep it in check, can you? This is going to be good, because you'll be reaching in, and you'll be over your foot, and you'll be right for a counter, and it didn't happen.
Well, it did. It happened a lot in the fight, but Chris Eubank Jr. couldn't pull the trigger.
No,
it was like he was stuck in the mud the entire fight. He couldn't do anything right in that fight. He was just fighting for a paycheck.
Well, I think there's more. That I found it quite sad, you see, because I just thought, as he said, actually, I thought even in the first round, this is not going to end well for me. This is not paraphrasing, but this is not. And you could see that he couldn't. But 2 things: I think that he couldn't do it, and I think he was depleted. He's made some comments around, or his team have, around something really serious and very bad happened in his camp, and it's a surprise that he even got to the ring. Now, that combined with Harlem Eubank saying, I hope he's not in hospital for too long, as do I, because of the rehydration issue, that smacks of what Conor Benn was saying before the fight, which is, well, he likes to play the victim. But all of that, something really bad happened. We need to know that. If you're going to put that out there, then we need to know what that was. But certainly on the night, he looked depleted. And I think he was surprised. Oh dear, windy pops. I think he was surprised that he was, that Ben was on him, and not on him in a kind of unfocused, winging the punches in, but on him in a sort of, I'm in and out quickly here, and you don't know where I am at all.
With regards to the weight, and Chris Eubank having problems with the weight the first time around, but no problems this time around. And the speculation from his brother of, I hope he doesn't end up in the hospital in a serious situation. I don't know Chris personally. I don't know anybody in his camp. So I want to make that point very, very clear before my next statement here. But what I do know is what I know about life and what I do know about other people. And what I do know is that a lot of that look, a lot of the drawn out, a lot of the weight issue, a lot of stuff like that, those issues, and the one thing that can put you in the hospital because of those issues is if you found a little bit of extra help in things like diuretics. Now, I don't know Chris. I'm not saying that, and I would never, ever implicate or say that he has. Heaven forbid, especially after all of the talk of him, with Conor Benn and being on the shelf for 3+ years because of his issues. But you know as well as I do what things like that and what taking extra precautions or extra measures, I should say, to lose the amount of weight that Chris Eubank Jr. would have had to keep off this time around, because he can't do it like he did last time. And he knew that. So he had to keep this weight off this time around. Sometimes, back in the day, you might have a couple of cross tops, might have some, some amphetamines, some stuff that they sell to truckers to keep them awake back in the 60s and 70s, I hear, allegedly. So who knows? Who knows what, because that stuff just eats the crap out of your liver. It eats your insides up badly. And we've seen it in other combat sports where it's happened. Who knows what kind of testing is happening? Who knows what they're pissing hot for? Who knows what they're testing for? But there's certainly an issue. And I think the greater issue is, can Chris Eubank Jr. continue to fight like this? And I say no. I say that's his last fight. If he's got any more fight left in him, it might be one more fight, but it's definitely not against Conor Benn. Unless Conor Benn can figure out a way to come up to, 170, 175, that's not going to happen. So then that asks yourself, Chris is in there then with killers at 170, and we know who those guys are. And that's fine. I think he should just ride off into the sunset, enjoy his career. He's got a couple of kids on the way, apparently, and just go love them. You've got nothing to prove. Conor Benn, however, still has something to prove. So now let me ask you this. At 147, it's kind of wide open for him, because everybody, it seems like, from 147 moved up to 154. And that's really where Conor Benn should be fighting. So who do you put Conor Benn in there with now? He's closed the door on a trilogy fight, which is smart. He spent way too many years on this one person, killing off his career for this one person for so long. So now he's got to get back into the mix. He's got to get into the mix in the first place, really. Who do you put him in there with next? What do you do, Steve?
Well,
you're brilliant.
Well, just to say that there won't be a trilogy fight, because the general feeling was that it didn't sell as well as they might have expected. So you could buy £30 tickets on the day of the fight. So unless that was AI'd up, it might have been. But that's the thing now, AI'd up is a phrase. AI'd up. I've just made it that. I think, and he does need to go. There's no point in having a trilogy. I think you're right. I think that Chris Eubank would go. I don't think there are any diuretics or anything else in there. I think it'd be foolish to do that. I just think he's of an age, and I think the first fight took too much out of him. and really, he was aggressive in that first fight. So aggressive, you can't come up again for that. So Conor, well, I mean, if you're smart and you want a belt and you've got all this play to parlay, then you want a weak champion, don't you? You want to be looking at a weak champion, don't you?
I mean, you should, but there aren't any. There aren't really any. I'll throw a name out there. Here's who I would love to see a Conor Benn fight. And this is against somebody who's got a belt-ish, I think. Give me Conor Benn, Rolly Romero.
It would be a great fight. It would be a fantastic fight. It would be great.
The lead up to it would be fantastic as well, because they both know how to talk.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Now the problem would be is that then as Conor Benn can't get away from opponents that have a lisp, but that's neither here nor there.
Well, I mean, but the name that's been flying around, and we need to talk about weights and all that, is Mario Barrios.
Of course it is, because they want that belt off of him so badly. They might as well just strip him of the belt. They're throwing him like, please, somebody beat Mario Barrios and get this belt off of him. This is what I'm seeing with that, right? They don't want him as a champion. Okay, so Conor Benn as a champion instead of Mario. Then, okay, what? You got to do Conor Benn and Devin Haney? I could see that.
I mean, that's a tasty fight as well. That's a tasty fight. And, and after the Brian Norman Jr. Farrago, which will happen, I believe, then, Devin Haney's going to be looking for something. I mean, it all depends, doesn't it? You're right. The world is their oyster now. So they can either say, let's make those tasty fights. And I believe Conor Benn will be saying that. I believe he'll be saying, if there's a choice between Romero and Barrios, he'll be saying, I want Rolly Romero, because it's a great fight and he wants great fights. I do believe that. I don't believe he's a business of boxing type. I believe he's a tear-up boxing of boxing type. And we won't see it.
Then screw it. Give me him and Ryan Garcia.
Now that would be, any of those fights are tasty because, as you say, because he can talk and because he's going to bring it wherever you go. You see, the thing with Conor Benn is that this is his time. He's probably got 2 years at that level because of the way he fights.
Yep.
So you've got to either make that decision of, is he going to be someone who might not be a champion, but you remember his fights over and over again, and he makes a lot of money because of that? Or are we going to put a belt on him and then say, come on, who wants me?
I think you're right in the first one there. I think he goes down as a Mickey Ward fighter. A guy who, was good enough to get to the show, but not good enough to take over the show. And you remember him for his guts. I think that a lot of his career was wasted because of popping hot twice and spending so much time in this Chris Eubank thing. I think that killed a lot of his prime, so to speak. So yes, you're right. So he's got to be very strategic about who he picks next. And whether it's going to be, do you go for money? Do you go for a belt? Does legacy really matter? Or do you pay your bills? That's really the thing at the end of the day. Because if we're talking about legacies and legacies even mattering, we got one more topic to talk about before the end of this, because it looks like the official word has come down, Steve Swift. The World Boxing Organization announced today, the 17th of November, that they've gotten communication from Team Alexander Usyk regarding the future of the WBO Heavyweight Championship, and they said, we accept and respect his decision to relinquish the WBO Heavyweight Super Championship. It's not just a regular championship, ladies and gentlemen. The WBO is a super championship. Now, if I had my choice, and much like Alexander Usyk said, I'll take the soup. And he said, I'm out of here. You're not getting 3% or whatever your percentage of me sitting around holding this belt is. Go F off. Kick rocks. Pound sand. Now, this is the interesting part, though, Steve, because the WBO also said in this statement, this is not a farewell. but as expressed by his team, a respectful pause. The doors of the WBO will always remain open to Alexander Usyk and his team. This is the same playbook that Alexander Usyk has done before. Alexander Usyk calls his shots. You don't call his shots. And this is what he's proved again. It's like, yeah, sure. I'll tell you what, go take the belt, whatever. I've got my copy of it. You're going to have to make a new one for that guy. Go take the belt. Now he's the champion. I'm talking about Fabio Wardley is now the official champion, not just the interim champion. And if and when I decide to come back and fight for that, I will. Now he can fight again to unify all the belts, or he sets himself up to take any other fight by doing this. It's brilliant by Usyk, because think about this. Let me give you a rundown, Steve. I'm going to give you some names here. We're going to run down the WBO rankings. So now you've got Fabio Wardley in here, right? What do you do with him as the champion? Who do you put him up against next? Because we'll start at, you know what? We'll start at number 10. Bakadir Jalolov. Number 9, Nelson Heisa. Number 8, your buddy, Derek Chisora. Number 6, Jared Anderson. Number 5, Daniel Dubois. Number 4, Lawrence Okoli. Number 3, Zheli Zhang. Number 2, Filip Hrgovic. And the number 1 kid, Moses Aitama. So what do you do? What do you do with Fabio Wardley then?
Well,
because Moses is tied up.
Yes, indeed. So let me just say this. This is perfect then now, because what I said, was it last week? Yeah, it was. I was really a bit concerned and upset and disappointed that Derek doesn't get his final fight.
I know where you're going.
Well, Derek doesn't care if he gets knocked out or what. He doesn't fucking care. He just wants to go out strong.
Do you give him that final fight, that number 50, with a shot at the title to go out, the sell, the story? The story is already there, which leads me to believe that if this whole thing, because that fight got canceled already, we talked about this last week when you asked, where's the Derek Chisora fight? We're like, it's been pulled off because the paperwork didn't come through. Well, maybe the paperwork didn't come through because they already knew from talking camp to camp before official word comes out, because you know how this stuff works. They already knew that Alexander Usyk was going to give up that belt. And now Fabio Wardley's going to need an opponent. I think that that's exactly what happened.
And it's not in Derek's nature to be really calm about this kind of thing. And he has been, because he's been doing a lot of work for IFL. So he's been doing a lot of, I'll grab the mic and talk to people. Great moment, by the way, just before the fight, the Ben and Eubank fight, when he was talking to Ben Shalom and brought Eddie Hearn over, and Ben just blanked him completely. Eddie Hearn went, that wasn't very nice, was it? Apples and pears. That wasn't very nice, was it? That was good. But anyway, he's been doing a lot of that and has been really calm about it. So this would be exactly the fight that Chisora should have. Nobody on this boxing earth thinks he's going to beat Fabio Wardley, but Derek, as I say, doesn't care about that. He just wants a war, and Fabio, and he can take Fabio Wardley a few rounds, because Wardley isn't the fighter that Wardley thinks he is.
No, I don't think he is, but that's because he hasn't faced the competition that he should have been facing up to this point. This is a really good setup for him. And then you say, hey, if for whatever reason Derek Chisora gets through this one and becomes champion, that fight number 51 against Alexander Usyk to unify those belts would be a great way to go out. Now you've got a chance. You've gotten through the one. Now you've got a chance to unify all of the belts as Derek Chisora. One thing that you've never been able to accomplish before you go. The story writes itself for this stuff. I think it's fantastic. So, and if not, Fabio Wardley, he's still the guy.
Yes. And also, go on.
I was just going to say, there's one guy that we saw fight on this weekend who I have to say, shout out to Ben Shalom first and foremost, because it looks like Boxer did very well with their guys this past weekend. One guy who looked like he had swallowed the previous version of himself is Richard Riakporhe. Holy crap, did he ever go from cruiserweight to heavyweight in a big way. I haven't seen shoulders like that, I mean, in forever. He looked great in his fight, but I mean, if I was to offer a sniff test, I might think that Richard is on everything but rollerblades. I might think that. If I wasn't so smart to litigious actions.
Quite right. You're right to be. I think this was beautiful bringing on by his team and by Ben Shalom.
Yes.
Beautiful bringing on, because Welsh offered no real, I mean, really, like Frank Bruno, he should have offered advertising space on the soles of his shoes, because there was no way he was going anywhere.
No.
But that's beautiful work, because he's a monster. That's what you say. He's now a monster.
Yeah.
And I was a bit curmudgeonly afterwards and said, well, we don't really know about Richard Riakporhe, do we? But in the general scheme of things, he looks fantastic, and has announced himself in the way that David Adelaide did the other day, but has faded away. And that's because you've got all of these fantastic Brit fighters, brilliant, burgeoning Brit fighters, brilliant Brit boxers. I should be in headline writing. And just talking about Usyk, he's done a real, I mean, he, as you say, he makes his own decisions, and he's brilliant at it. And the WBO, the reason why they have that second paragraph is because he said to them, not in so many words, but he said to them, and I've said this many times, you can push me and I'm dropping this belt. You told me I have to fight Wardley. You're making that decision for me, are you? Well, go and fuck yourself, because actually I don't need this belt. And I've done it before with the IBF, so I don't need it, actually. And a lot of people are saying, which is going to help Fabio Wardley, well, he must be scared of Fabio Wardley. He's not scared of Fabio Wardley.
No.
He's not scared of Fabio Wardley. Why would he be scared of Fabio Wardley? He's got the skills to beat Fabio Wardley all day, but Fabio Wardley's not exciting to him,
right,
and he wants to be excited. So he will come back, and that's why the WBO needed to add that caveat, which was, we'll always welcome you back, do not worry. But it gives Fabio Wardley, for some boxing aficionados and fans, it gives that, Usyk was frightened of him, so now he's the man.
It's weird. It's weird, that statement, because you hear it far more than you should in combat sports. We're not watching these sports at the blossoming stage of it. We're watching these sports at the highest level. None of these guys are afraid of each other. None of them are afraid to get into a ring or a cage or an octagon, whatever it is, and fight one another. That statement is silly. Normal civilians make those statements, and it's dumb. Stop doing it, because you don't know. But what I know is that none of them are afraid to fight one another. So stop. It's financial, it's tactical, it's business. And it's also Alexander Usyk saying, just like you said, Steve, you don't control me. I don't need any of this. At no time can I go to the bank with the belt on and be like, hey, I'll push back that mortgage. Alexander Usyk is a guy who's living in a country right now that is in the middle of one of its largest wars. He's not worried about any fighter. He's got to worry about a bomb being dropped on his head. But he's also not going to be held up hostage because, oh, what? Because I have your belt? Shut up. Shut the hell up. If I want it back, I'm going to come back and get it. And I love that Alexander Usyk is kind of the usurper of that heavyweight division, the guy who's come in, the smallest one to ever come in and do this, the way that he's done it, and still said, you know what? I don't need none of you. You need me. I'm the A side in all of this. Remember that. I'm the A side. Now, Steve, always a pleasure, always a thrill. I don't know if people know this or not, but you, and we've talked about this before, over at World Weary Guy 1, which is where everybody needs to go check. Well, you know, I mean, I could just, let's just do this.
Wrestling, rock, pop, books, films, TV, boxing. All of this is covered on Steve Swift's Rambling Reviews. I am he, Steve Swift, a UK guy, What you get is all of that, and a funny voice, and even a funnier face. See? Steve Swift's Rambling Reviews. Come to me. I've got a review. Just for you. Ta-ta.
I think it sells it all, right? What is Steve Swift talking about on his Rambling Reviews this week?
Well, I've done a lot of boxing, as you know, an awful lot of boxing, including the Anthony Yarden Benavidez head-to-head, which was just lovely because I'm getting sick and tired of all the kind of eat your children and all that. And actually, they were really. So there were two things. Anthony Yarde was he did a Dave Allen honesty thing, which was, I'm the underdog. I'm absolutely the underdog. And Benavidez saying, it was great, actually. He said, loads of people want to fight me. You're the only one who's stepped up. Loads of people want to fight me. And then when I ask them, they say, oh, I've got something else to do. Yes, all of that. So I'm talking about all of that. I've gone back to, because I've been on a bit of a Queen tip lately. So I've been doing Roger Taylor's solo albums, which are a mixed bag. They're a mixed bag. The first one I absolutely love, Full in Space. I love it. But yesterday I read something, because you get the algorithms, don't you? And it said that he thought that the posthumous Queen album, Made in Heaven, was the best farewell album ever. And I didn't bother much with it at the time because I thought it's over and I don't want to go back. So I listened to it again today. And you know what? I don't want to go back again because it's blooming poor in my view. So I don't really like it very much. So have a look at that. I also reviewed I Know What You Did Last Summer, which is such a basic reboot that they didn't even bother to change the sodding title. They didn't even call it I Know What You Did Last Summer Redux. It had Freddie Prinze Jr. in it. I couldn't even recognize him. I thought, is he in it? Oh yeah. And about 45 minutes in, I said to my friend Alan, is this about to end? I think it is, but it looks like I feel like I've been watching it for about 15 minutes. It's so easy to watch. And I've got a theory about why Hollywood movie icons are dying out and there's no one to replace them. And it's not the Hollywood movie icons' fault. So that's on there as well. There's tons and tons and tons.
Everything's coming to AI nowadays, Steve. That's really what it boils down to. AI is going to take over the world, but they'll never be as smart as you, especially when it comes to the world of boxing. Steve Swift, there's only one other man who's ever made a better statement in life than you, and you know what that is, right?
Come to the children. Wu-Tang is for the children. We teach the children.
I mean, it says it all right there, right, Steve? So, if you don't like the Queen album and you think it's over and you prefer the Taylor's stuff when he was in Duran Duran, what? Oh, wrong Taylor. Sorry, my mistake. Listen, if you don't like it, fight me. Just remember, I'm coming swinging, so you best tuck your chin.